from mobile homes. I'm sorry, let me start again. So there was 442 open cases. Okay, out of the 442 cases, 2 are mobile homes, 117 cases are appraisals. That leaves us with 323 cases for real estate, and those cases are against, that includes brokers, salesperson, and camps. Okay, and then out of the 323 cases, 50 of those cases were against property managers. That's the stats I have for you for as of last week.
Right, it seems like the property management in recent years, seems like there's been more complaints about property management.
For sure. For sure. And then we also had a meeting with legal, my supervisor, Robert, Joe, and myself, and it has been determined that any complaints that comes in from the community association, if it's the unit owner, it is out of our jurisdictions to move forward with the investigation. That those complaints technically has to go to either the OG's office, the Attorney General's, or sometimes the Board of Housing, because DCP is, we can only handle complaints that comes from somebody on the board of directors or the CAM himself.
We have had in the past, well, I just want to just a couple things on it. I just looked at this quickly, and I recognize a couple of things that come up again. Do you ever check and see if there's any repeat offenders?
So the repeat, we have some. You mean like the people that the respondent or the complainant?
The respondent.
Okay. We have some, but it's not a huge volume where, where the one respondent is getting like 10 or 15 complaints. They might have like a handful, if that. And if that's the case, then what we do is we do what we call a master case. So, and I believe right now we have maybe 5 master cases out there that are against, one particular one particular respondent. So when we have cases that are, let's say they're from 3 or more complainants, and it's against, one person, one salesperson or brokers or property managers, then we do a master case for that. So we combine all the complaints against one person.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if I might, Ben, about that.
Sure.
So we have to distinguish here between property manager and community association manager. The rest of the world would call this residential property management. There's an institution called the CAI, the Community Association Institute, who coined a phrase, community association. And we have adopted what they've created. So we are in charge at the DCP of the CAM license, the Community Association Management license. So I'm concerned about what you said, that an individual owner, if I live at a condominium and the person who is my community association manager is violating one of the policies of their CAM license, I think that is under the DCP's responsibility. If they're unlicensed or if they're commingling funds, or they're, so I disagree that that a complaint should only be filed by the CAM themselves, because that means against themselves. So I don't understand that.
No. I'm referring to cases.
Yeah.
I'm referring to cases that comes, that the cases that comes in from that are against the CAMs. So let's say you're a unit owner in a community. And the process is you're supposed to go to the board to make the complaint against the camps. That's what I was referring to.
I'm afraid that doesn't give them access, so for example, if someone is unlicensed, don't forget, the board are not professionals. So the board may not be responsive. The board may even like this person who's acting as a cam, who may or may not be licensed. So it's my opinion that, that we're supposed to protect the consumer, and the consumer is the unit owner. So I understand there's going to be a lot of nonsense things that are coming through, but there are going to be some real things also, such as the person who's managing my community is unlicensed. And then, by the way, there are many cases where someone unlicensed can manage. I take it back. A residential apartment that's a rental apartment can be managed by anyone. But in order to manage a condominium association or a co-op, someone must be a CAM. It's required.
So, yeah, so Peter, if that is the case, we would have to, well, we obviously read the complaint and we evaluate it. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying in regards to, it's our job to protect the consumer, and then when the complaints comes in, it's not like the unit owners has no place to go. They can go to the OG's office, and we do refer to them. We obviously read the complaints and we see, what the best suggestion is for them. We either tell, like I said, we'll tell them we'll even put in a link for them, give them the information. They can go to the OG's office, or they can go to the Board of Housing. So it's, it's not like we leave them stranded. And then we also, let them know, like for example, there's a particular case that I'm working on right now. I suggested to him that, it is obviously a case that needs to go forward, but he needs to either do two things. If he knows somebody on the board that can file the complaint against the CAM, I can move forward with the investigation. If, and this is, and you're right, this is a problem a lot sometimes, and not sometimes, a lot, that what happens is the unit owner makes the complaint, and the members of the boards are in it with the CAM, so they have a great relationship with the CAM. So it's difficult for the unit owners, and that is a huge problem, without a doubt. I agree with you on that part. And
it sounds like you're handling it really well. You have a live person actually reading and being responsive. And if you're not the appropriate party to handle it, I love that you guys refer it to someone so they can be heard. I think you guys are handling it really well. And it is complicated.
Yes. So we definitely do refer it out. We don't let it sit there, and, we let them know that it's, that they should file the complaint with the OG's office or whoever. And, and going back to my case, so I told the unit owners he can either get somebody on the board to file the complaint, and I will go forward with the investigation, or he could file this complaint with everything that he's given me. It looks like a really good substantial case. I gave him the information to the OG's office to file with. And, he said that he knows somebody on the board that's going to file it for him. So I'm waiting for that. And then I'll just keep moving forward with that particular case.
Okay. I guess the thing that the surprising part is that we had over the years, this is only recently, maybe I want to say 5-6 years now, that we were seeing more and more around the complaints about the camps, where it went for, I haven't been since 2000, but for 20 years, over 20 years, very, very little, if any, it seems like, not for years. I'm just wondering what has changed to cause all this. But right now, do you know how many? I'm sorry, I didn't get how many pendings you currently have working on
against the CAMs?
No, I get overall complaints period.
Oh, okay. So for real estate brokers, salesperson, and CAMs are 323 open cases.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the past 2 years, I mean, Jill was here, so she could probably answer that question more. As you know, I'm recent. It hasn't been a year for me yet, but I believe from what I heard or what Jill told me is that it was because like the real estate market was really booming, and the past 2 years the cases just kind of loaded up. Jill, do you want to answer that questions? Because I wasn't around then.
Jill?
Sure, I am here. Hello, everybody. Yeah, we have a backlog of cases. I started new in June of 2020 during COVID, and cases were in the queue. Cases were coming in, and I was learning the job, and it was a little slow going at first. So, yeah, it's a slower process when you're one person working, learning the job on the job training. So, yeah, we have people have all been notified. They know there's no real deadline on these cases. We try to look at the cases and determine which ones need to be addressed right away, which ones, they all get a letter sent out that their case has been received, reach out to the respondent. It's a process getting.
I guess my concern would be that, Jill, that something is getting stalled in the system, which means, and that concern about obviously something's probably needs attention immediately. And how do you siphon that out and jump on that right away? How do you take care of that?
Well, we look at the new cases coming in.
Yeah.
It's some people don't respond. Some responders don't respond back initially, and you have to ask a second and third time. It's not, something can be very quick, like, okay, someone's unlicensed. You could determine that quickly. When you're asking for people to respond back and then they want an extension, we have to grant them that. Then they want to hire an attorney, then we have to wait for that. There's a lot of moving parts. But we have closed out quite a few.
One of the things you've closed out, you used the ethical, unethical conduct.
So
is there a law?
No, there's no law for ethics, but if you see unethical conduct, I'm looking, it's closed. Every case is either pending, open, or closed. And if it's an unethical then that means it's probably been referred to perhaps an MLS or maybe the Association of Realtors.
Yeah.
It's just something that we don't have the jurisdiction over. So it will say unethical because that's what the complaint was, but we will close it.
It seems to be, though, over the years, that always was a high percentage. I mean, obviously we referred it to the boards.
It is the highest percentage. Actually, I ran a sheet the other day. I had a round table at GHAR, and I want to say like 40%. Don't hold me to that number, but it was a large number that were ethical complaints.
All right. This is good. I'm glad we're again, I've got to stay on top of this. I didn't meet with the DCP commissioner on it. It was one thing he brought up, that we would be getting a report on our every meeting. Any other questions regarding this? Nobody has any questions? Okay, DCP Legal Division. Anything to speak about?
No report at this time. The legislation appears to be moving through with no particular concerns or resistance that have been noted. Enforcement cases are continuing to be processed as they come through.
Any questions for Ryan? Okay, hardship
Thank you.
waiver. Sorry. Was there any question for Ryan? Is that we all set on that? Okay, hardship waiver request. There's two of them. First one's with David, Michael. David, are you here? David? All right, have you read his request, everyone? Yeah, is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's discuss this a little bit. I mean, go ahead. Apparently he has not been licensed, as we know, for more than 2 years. His license expired, right, Jill? Jill, you're
So-
muted.
Sorry, sorry, Ben, I was muted. I'm actually pulling up his credential right now.
I'd like you to stay on just for these two for me. So I'm not sure I get this, but anyhow, he's let his license expired.
I can give you that information in 1 second. It's coming up right now.
Okay.
Let's see. So he expired on March 31st of 2021. So it's been 2 years. So after 2 years, generally the license is not able to be reinstated after 2 years of being inactive.
So his hardship is what? I don't see a hardship.
He wants, it looks like he's looking for a 120-day extension to complete his continuing education. I don't know why he needs 120 days. I mean, there's 6 hours.
Amy, you have any questions on that one? Linda? Ed?
No.
Is the respondents not on the call, are they?
I asked.
No.
We asked.
No, that one's not.
Ben, you
So
asked
he's
about,
had a license. He's had a license for like 25 years. See. Just trying to do a full display here for myself.
Jennifer, can I ask you a question? Was he notified that there was going to be a meeting today and discuss this? How would he know?
I mean, that would have been something that, that's not something I would have done.
Well, who's responsible for that?
He should have been, but let me check in with Jason. He's the one who sends out the email, so I'll message him right now.
So he's only been a broker since 2019. Before that, he was a salesperson. He was a salesperson for many years. Got his broker's license December of 2019 and renewed it in 2020. And in 2021, he did not.
Well, to let it expire like this, I mean, it's a little irresponsible.
Just so I understand, so he got his broker's license in 2019, but if he had gotten it in 2020, that means he would not have had to do CE for that cycle. Is that correct?
He did not have to do CE for 2020, but he does need CE for 2022.
But isn't the cycle for 2022 to 2024?
He got his license in 2019. So he did, that was 18 to 20 and then 20 to 22, then 20, going forward to 24. So he does need CE.
Okay.
Ben, you asked about the hardship. I mean, he talks a lot about what happened before 2021. He doesn't talk about what happened after 2021 as to why he wasn't able to renew it.
I will say one thing, that when somebody fails to renew a license, and I have gotten this from the director of licensing, if you don't renew a license, like let's say he didn't renew in 2020, as he did not, then he would not get a renewal notice in 2021. So,
Okay.
But he's been a broker for 25 years, or he's
no,
been
he has,
licensed
he's been, yes,
but he's been licensed for 25 years. So he's
Yeah.
been going through this process for 25 years.
yes.
Whether it's a salesperson or a broker license.
Mhm.
And the
I mean,
date
it's-
changes, from May to March.
I've
Right.
always gotten a renewal license. So I mean, it's confusing to me why he wouldn't have gotten a renewal license.
Well, he would have gotten a renewal
The first time.
the first time. And I'm just checking to make sure he does have an email attached to his credential. So he did get an email the first time. The second time he would not have, because he would have been inactive. They don't send renewals to inactive licensees, okay? So, I mean, I wish he was on the call because then he could speak for himself. And now here you are, guy, you're gonna make a decision without his input, but that's not your problem.
But that tells me a lot. I mean, I just want to make sure that he was notified.
Yeah,
That
I just reached out to Jason and he let me know that he was not requested to reach out to them and he didn't have their contact information. So he did not reach out to them. If anyone else did, I'm unaware of it, but it sounds to me like they were not notified.
If you
In
have a
the
hearing, shouldn't, or
absence
if we're reviewing something, shouldn't the respondent have a chance to provide
That's-
background?
It always has been in the
Okay,
past.
so then we need to hold on this, like we can't make a decision. Was the
I
other
agree.
person also not notified?
Correct. It seems like that.
Okay.
Can we,
Well,
in the
that's
interest
true.
of,
No, yeah,
in the interest of time, so this gentleman, you know, is it possible that we give him 10 days to do this, you know, to get this continuing ed? No.
I wouldn't
You
do
know.
that. I wouldn't do that. I just want to hear his reasoning and, I mean, what's an additional, I mean, I guess he has to wait now 2 months for the next meeting. Is that the problem?
That's my concern, is we know that he wasn't notified. So if we give him a short amount of time to complete it or to come to our meeting in 2 months, you know, is that a reasonable approach?
I mean, is it reasonable for me to try to reach him right now when we continue on with the meeting and see if I
Yes.
can get him?
sure.
Is that,
Same,
What
same
about
with the other
person?
one. Yeah.
I mean, let me see if I have, I'm sure I have an
The
email from
the
him.
other one I read, and I think that's pretty clear. But you're right, they should both have the opportunity.
Although he says here in his continuing education hardship waiver, it was whited out and then it was put back in and handwritten, real estate license. I currently work for a corporation and don't technically, I guess, need to hold a real estate license. I would like to preserve my license for future potential. So it's not that he needs it now. He said, well, someday I may need it. Is that how everybody reads it?
Yes.
I don't have any
And it-
contact information and I don't have an email from him, so I am not able to.
You know, shouldn't on these forms, we recommend they modify this form, at least you have contact emails or telephone numbers for these people, so they can be instantly contacted. It would make everything come back, it takes forever. But by right though, and we always have been and made sure that the individuals did have the opportunity to speak, and that's all in all fairness. I don't know about everybody else. My feeling about both of these, then they should be postpone this till the next meeting. And anybody agree or don't agree?
Well, how
I-
can,
I-
how
the
are we gonna
second one-
contact them?
Sorry, you go first.
Okay, I just want to know how we're gonna contact them. Jill just said she has no contact information. For David. Okay, go ahead, Peter, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
thank you. So 2 things. The second one, I believe the name is Koto. You know, for me, and I don't know about you guys, she describes the nature of the hardship, and I read it, and it's very
Right.
compelling. So I don't want to have her wait if you guys aren't opposed. I've got the whole story there that I need to make a decision. With this other gentleman, if we can't get in touch with him and he wasn't notified, I think we have to, we have to allow him the opportunity.
I agree, but you're right. There's enough information here. Unfortunately said, and she's not asking for a lot of time, if I remember right.
Yeah, I don't want to put her through any more hardship because she's already having a hardship.
I agree with that, but I have a question. In this letter from David, he states, you know, he wants to preserve his license. Well, why didn't, if that was the case, why didn't he preserve it before? So that's just my opinion on that.
I think that's what I said a little while ago, right? We're right back. Yes, that's correct. But I agree with Peter, by the way. I think there's reading this poor woman has gone through a lot.
I agree.
I think I'm ready to vote on that particular.
I'd like to propose a motion with Koto that we approve her.
Yeah, let me ask a question. Is there any reason why we shouldn't? Does anybody see that? Okay. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, I'd like to propose a motion that we approve Koto's request.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion? Oppose? Then it passes. So we agree to give it the extension. All right. Who actually notifies her of such? Jill? You do that, Jill?
No,
Sorry, Ben,
I
I've
do
been-
that. I do that, Jay.
Okay.
And if Jill is unable, are you able to contact Mr. McCool or so that he
I'm
can
trying.
come in front of? Oh, you are.
I'm
Do you have
trying right now.
contact?
That's why I was on the phone with somebody else trying to get I don't have a contact number for him. I don't know if there's a number in the file.
Well, anyhow, as I said before, Jill, I don't know if you heard me. You've got to modify these forms where you have information right on it. I mean,
Okay, but I don't set up the meeting, Ben. I just attend it.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
the form actually does that.
Continuing
I'm looking
education
into why
hardship
his isn't
waiver
there, but
extension
the form
report
does that.
that they all fill out.
Yeah, no, the form includes that. I don't know why his information isn't there. I'm checking into it, but the form.
Okay.
Based on us not having the information, how do you guys feel about us putting in a motion of granting him 30 days to complete this? Based on the fact we may not have his contact information and he wasn't notified, so he didn't really have full opportunity.
Well,
I'm opposed to giving this person exemption.
I am also,
Simply because they have had licensure for many years, and online training is available to them, so they can do it anywhere. It doesn't matter if they're in state or not. And they had plenty of time, and they didn't renew the prior year. So, I mean, there's like, they weren't really motivated.
that's right. Amy's right. Not only that, I think also, he's been a licensed salesman for many, many years. So he knows that you've got to be licensed. This is not a new thing for him. Maybe the brokerage is just recently, but the system still runs about the same way. So I have enough information to make a decision.
I do as well.
Linda? Linda?
Linda, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Can you raise your hand? Can you raise your hand if you agree that you have enough information? Okay. Morag,
Okay.
do you feel you have it by reading this hardship waiver extension? You have enough information to make a decision now?
I'm relying on you professionals, so yes.
Ed?
I don't think we do have enough information.
Yeah, I also don't think we have enough information. I would need to abstain.
Then we're going to postpone this. Let's wait for next meeting on his application for extension.
And hopefully he will be contacted prior to that meeting.
Well, I have to get a hold of them, right? Okay. Proposed mandatory course from CTR.
Do you need a vote on that?
We're postponing it. It's the. We need to make it clear, then we will. Make a motion.
Motion to postpone McCool until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it'll be postponed till next meeting. Hey, proposed mandatory course review by CTR. CTR is here, right?
Yes,
Cindy, how are you?
good.
Busy as usual, aren't you? Okay, tell us what we're gonna do here.
So we submitted after the last meeting, we submitted a new course that included new laws in addition to fair housing criteria. After submittal of it, within the past month, we learned there is a new additional protected class that is not included in here. So I just wanted to flag that we will be adding victims of domestic violence into this class as well. And I also understand that this would not be, if approved, it would not be a separate course for approval. It would be in addition to the course, an option instead of the Yukon course. So you could take the Yukon course, or you could take this course and anything else you may approve, but it would be an alternate. We felt it was incredibly important to cover fair housing. And so that's why we submitted an alternate course, because fair housing is not included in the Yukon course. And I understand legal at DCP has already reviewed the content to be sure it aligns with what's in the statute.
So you're saying DCP has approved it, the course?
No, the only ones who can approve it is you.
Correct, but they've
Yeah,
gone through.
sorry. Yeah, they reviewed it to be sure that the content that we provided was consistent with what would be approvable in a mandatory course, is what I understood, which is how it was able to make it onto the agenda today.
I can add some more information if it's sought, Mr. Chairman.
It's just that in the past, as you know, we've always had an educational committee that will review this. They worked on these things for months. You know, they're made from instructors and commissioners, and, which is in the University of Connecticut. And I don't know. I guess what I'm looking here and are thinking out a little bit is that future courses, how are they going to be handled? Same way? They're not going to have, so we're not going to be using an educational committee.
I could weigh in on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So previously the education committee had developed the mandatory course that we had one single mandatory course that was then submitted around. The education committee, without the participation of DCP, may continue to do that, and UConn intends to continue to offer their version of the mandatory course. However, there's nothing in the law that allows, that requires that there be one exclusive mandatory course. Anyone that offers a school may submit a course for consideration by the commission. And that's what CTR has done here. I just want to clarify, we have reviewed the course materials to assure that it meets the bare minimum of it, covers the three areas that are in the regulation, real estate laws and regulations, and fair housing. And the commission has, my understanding, declined to provide any further outline of curriculum that'd be required for this course at this time. So this is not a DCP endorsement of the CTR course, but rather stating that this materials that's submitted are what they claim to be, and that they cover the areas that are mentioned in the regulation. That said, it is up to the commission to decide whether or not this is a course that should be approved. But we are no longer in a situation where the course that was submitted by the Education Committee is the exclusive mandatory course that be offered in the state of Connecticut. That would not be something that'd be permissible.
So the course is completed right now, right, Cindy? Everything that's supposed to be in this course is in this course.
Except, yeah, what's missing is edits, the edit that includes a new protected class.
All right. So when are we going to have that?
But there wasn't anything about like agency or really at all, was there?
I don't, well, Ben can speak to it. I don't believe the statute requires that every course include an agency component. There hasn't been a change to agency laws.
Okay, so I have, all right, so if DCP is, or the commission is not allowed to say there is one mandatory course, then really nothing is mandatory, right?
That's not quite accurate. So it must cover, again, what the statute requires is real estate laws and regulations and fair housing. If the commission so chose, they could now vote to have a more detailed curriculum requirement. So a 1 or 2 page outline of the items that the commission thought should be covered in a mandatory course. It's my understanding from the chairman that that was not the direction the commission wanted to go this time around, but rather as long as it covered those main areas, it would be up to the commission to approve.
But the list of topics for courses that can be approved is for any course, whether it's the mandatory course or an elective class. Is that correct?
No, so there's 2 different areas of the regulation, which I can pull up now if you just give me 1 second, and I can walk through the different requirements. But no, there's just the one mandatory course as it's described in the regs. It specifically details those 3 requirements. So it's regulation of state agencies 20-319-3. And one course consisting of at least 3 classroom hours in current real estate and fair housing legislation, licensing laws, and regulations. So that is currently the only legal kind of guardrails that cover the mandatory course. The rest of the areas of law cover everything from fair housing laws, ethics, finance, appraisal, management, planning and zoning, securities and syndications, investment analysis, common interest ownership, interstate land sales, taxes and liens, title closing, real estate documents, and real estate math.
Okay.
Real estate math. Okay. So okay, we haven't seen this course yet. To look at. So what you would be asking us is a course that you've gone over, but we haven't seen the course yet. I think we'd have to review this. And then by looking at the course, we may want to have another opinion by someone else regarding this course. I don't know, but we have nothing here to look at.
Mr. Chairman, would those materials should have been provided? Were they not provided to you prior to the meeting?
No. No, we have no course. All we have is the application for real estate free continuing course, educational course. That's all we have.
I will look into that and see where that disconnect was that is on the agency.
Yeah, we submitted the course in February.
Correct. And I will look into that.
The
Well,
course is
even back
actually
then-
there. I found it this morning. So in the application, there are links embedded in the application, and like several of them you open and they're just blank pages. But the PDF, Hot Topics in Real Estate Laws and Fair Housing -2023.pdf, that is the training document, like the instructor's guideline, I guess. It's essentially just slides, but there's no, I didn't find any like useful instructor notes on it. So several of the slides were just bullet points, but there was no in-depth, this is what we're going to discuss.
Amy, I think we need to forget about this searching and looking and whatever. We shouldn't have to look under a rock to find this. You should have simply given this to us as an attachment, as many other things that we can look at. And then if we had it ahead of time, I might have asked some question prior to that before the meeting.
Yeah.
Now, I know that if you had it since February or whatever, it was held back to when I can understand for editing, let's call it, or adding. But there was time here.
Again, just to say, CTR submitted the course as it was instructed on the DCP website, and we forwarded to you as we received it. If that was not an accessible way for you to receive that material, we will look and find a more digestible way for you to receive the material.
Appreciate that. There's some questions here. People have been waiting on Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Sirico. I've been a realtor instructor over 35 years. I was on the committee with Bruce. There are things about fair housing in there. And it also seems to me that this is all going to become very confusing to people who have already completed their CE or people in the future that have to. It seems to me, Cindy, it would be served better as an elective course.
No,
And
that is not our request.
okay, no, I'm just saying that to you. I'm giving you my input.
Yeah, absolutely not our request.
I know it's not your request, but I want to say that to you. Okay, because I think it's just going to be total confusion. And I also want to ask you a question. I have not seen it either. And I know we were asked by Kristen to change some slides, to condense them. I did that with her. And the question is, if this in fact becomes also a course, another course that you could have one or the other with required or take both. I don't know what yours looks like. That's a question. And I would like it submitted to our committee so we could take a look and maybe give you input too. Would that appear on the Connecticut on our website for the realtors, so they would see this is not just one course, but now there's two courses? Because I know in the past, that's where people go. They don't go to the state website.
Well, I'll address one of the details is we had this discussion the last cycle as well. We had a bias score. There was a bias course that was approved. And then another course provider had a entirely different course that they submitted to the commissioners, different title, different content, still a mandatory course. And the discussion at that time was, if that never went to the education committee, the entire discussion was that it was lawful for that other course to be approved for the mandatory cycle as an alternate to the course that had been developed. And so this is no different than what happened during the last cycle when I think it was the CE shop. The CE shop said, I think it was, no, it wasn't. It was another one of the providers, Keep Me Certified. Keep Me Certified had an alternate course that was approved by the commissioners as an alternate course. It was not remotely the same outline, and it had a different title, and it was different, and it was approved under the mandatory provision. So this request is no different than what the commissioners approved the last cycle with the mandatory course, in our opinion.
And Cindy, how far were we into CE when that happened? Because
it was toward the last month. We were 1 month out from the cycle ending when the Keep Me Certified class was approved as an alternate course.
But this is Jill Conklin. I just want to say one thing there, Cindy. The course title was the same title as the mandatory. It was the same title. It was not a new title.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in because I just don't want us to rehash a conversation that we kind of had already in the last meeting. As I think the commission understands, the law does not allow us to have one exclusive mandatory course. That's not something that is, you cannot preclude other people from providing a course that qualifies as a mandatory. As a rule, if there's courses that you don't believe adequately, cover the law or are misrepresent something, or that it is with your power to disapprove something that was submitted, but you can't operate from a position that we only want one. So that ship has sailed. We have to reorient ourselves in the industry, and we understand there's going to be an education of the industry saying you have to fulfill 12 hours of mandatory or of continuing education. Of that, 3 of which have to fulfill the mandatory course requirement. Here are your choices to fulfill that requirement. That's kind of the baseline of where we have to be based upon what the law says currently.
I don't think we're disagreeing with you, but I'm saying to you,
okay,
it's just going to be further confusion. That's what the point is. And the point
yes,
is that
absolutely.
fair housing, it's going to be confusing. You already know fair housing is in the course that we submitted. So I think it comes up in everything. So I myself would like to see where you're talking about, because I don't want to say, oh, I disagree with Cindy. I want to see what it says too. And I think as a courtesy, you might want to submit that so that we can also take a look at it. Because other people, I only found out about this discussion from people that were on our, at the instructor seminar. That's where I found that one. And there were people on there who said to me, gee, I would have liked to have attended, but I'm teaching that day. Okay. So, and that's what I want to say to you. So it would have been nicer if they also could have submitted something even in writing, because I'm sure you're probably allowed to do that. So that's where
I'm still confused. Are we proposing that there are 2 separate fair housing classes? Someone can pick either one of them?
It's 2 separate courses. Currently, there's a course that's been approved by this commission to fulfill the mandatory requirement. This course that was submitted by CTR would be a second course that would be an alternative course to fulfill that mandatory requirement. Included in that is an aspect of fair housing.
Okay, so someone
which
who's being trained by CGR can pick Class A or Class B, and either one will satisfy the requirement.
But Peter, I think
that
we
is
talked
correct.
about this last meeting. Our main concern was that how it's going to be labeled to eliminate any confusion. What they're saying is what we're trying to do. The question is that we want to make sure that the real estate public is aware of that. Okay, we're going through the middle of a cycle here. A lot of people have already taken their continuing ed. Some have completed it all and have taken the mandatory. So, I mean, we don't want to have confused the real estate community by saying, well, here's another. They're going to think it's going to be another course. So I can see what Teresa's saying. Confusing it could be. So
what is the name? Excuse me, Bruce.
It's labeled.
What's the name of this course anyway? What's the name of this course?
The name of the course is Hot Topics in Real Estate Laws and Fair Housing. Which covers the scope of the entire class. I mean, it is not. It's about hot topics, real estate laws, and fair housing. So the title reflects the entirety of the course.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking for and we a comment of some sort, and this will satisfy the mandatory course.
It would be and it would be for. I mean, all licensees could take the course. It would not be restricted to just Connecticut realtors. It would be open to any real estate licensee that wishes to take the course.
But I mean, my main thing is that is it going to be labeled that this is a course that will satisfy the mandatory course?
I can respond to that if you'd like.
Yes, please, Ryan.
On the website, it states under courses available, Any course that has the year noted in the mandatory column will fulfill the year's mandatory requirement. So it doesn't matter what the title of the course is. You just, if you want, you can even sort by the mandatory year, and any course. And we say there's 2 courses, but really there's 2 curriculums that are approved.
Right.
There's millions of courses because everyone is using the UConn's curriculum. So you can sort and you'll see, I don't know, 20, 30 courses that meet the mandatory requirement. And this, if you approve this, this would be one of them.
Why wouldn't you want it to be an elective? I'm not quite sure why. Is there a reason?
That's the Cindy.
Because we believe strongly that fair housing education needs to continue. And if it's mandatory course, if it's an elective course, it's one of 300 options that people have. And, you know, they may have very small viewership compared to a mandatory course.
But it's still an option.
So, yeah, and we also look at what our top areas of legal hotline calls are. So when we develop a course, the topics that were selected for hot topics are the ones we get the largest volume of calls about. So we think when we provide this instruction, we're responding to what we know or what the industry is asking and making mistakes about all the time. Like service animals, that is a very large percentage of our calls. Security deposits are a very large percentage of our calls. Photographs, large percentage of our calls. We think that we can best serve real estate licensees with the topics that we've included in this course. We know it's the ones that we're getting calls about every single day.
It's still an optional course.
Right. They could, right. Any licensee would be able to choose if they'd prefer to take the other course about solar panels, and I forget what the other topics are, solar panels and other topics.
Cindy, these are already in the course UConn submitted, what you just told us now. I know you're aware of that. Those 3 topics are in the course that UConn wrote.
They're actually not. I actually sat for the class yesterday, and we did not talk about service animals at all. The 14 protected classes were not discussed. And what was the third one you said? Pictures. I mean, they do. There's a huge section on surveillance and, you know, audio and visual surveillance during showings, but there's nothing fair housing related. And I think we specifically chose to leave that, the committee, because I was on the committee, chose to leave that out this cycle because the last time we had a mandatory fair housing class and the feedback we got on it was like everyone hated the class. So, you know, and I think the year cycle prior to that, we also had mandatory fair housing. So I think it was chosen that we kind of left that off for this cycle or included less of it. And that was just a choice that was made by the committee at that point.
There was some course that I saw and I was fascinated. It actually showed a diagram of a home and it showed where you can take pictures, video, audio.
That's the mandatory, that's in the mandatory approved class right now.
And that is fabulous because it is so confusing. It's such a hot topic. And it's something that we realtors need to know. And actually, I love whoever came up with the idea of putting that in a diagram. It's brilliant.
I think Kristen did that. And I do not disagree that fair housing is always important.
And a hot topic. It's always a hot class.
Always important.
Yeah. And it's very important. And it's confusing.
And I guess, you know, part of me also wishes that if CTR is getting constant calls about service animals, protected classes, things like that, when you do your weekly or bi-weekly CTR updates, like that's a good avenue to provide information like that to your entire membership. Like because you're sending weekly updates. So I mean, that could be a separate, and we get that in our GAR weekly updates too. Like there's often like a courtesy tip or something like that, or a forms update or whatever. But like if you're finding that you're consistently getting calls about those sorts of things, that could be just be blasted out to the membership, like each week take a different topic. And I'm not saying that replaces a class. Frankly, I just wish the education committee got a little more guidance this time around when we were coming up with the class And, you know, if we shouldn't be providing a mandatory class, or there was other stuff that should have been in there, I wish we had received that feedback while we were in the committee and going through the process, not a year after it's happened where we're mid-cycle. That's it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a discussion about, you know, whether the UConn course should continue. This is just providing an alternate course for those who may want, you know, a different course. And I just want to respond about our bias course. We got extraordinarily good feedback from that course. I mean, we had many, I don't know if you looked at any of the course evaluations or just personally didn't like it, but we got very,
I had literally 0 issues with that class, and I thought it was great. I just got blasted along with others on social media stuff and real estate groups about how it was biased against white people and blah, blah, which is obviously the issue we're trying to solve, but like, that's where I heard it.
Right. Well, and one of the issues is people who think they don't need fair housing training are the ones who need fair housing training. So that's, I mean, they do. And I do think that a lot of eyes were opened, but like right now, people are not aware. We've had gender identity and expression in state law for many years. People don't understand if someone wants to be called by the pronoun, they could have a fair housing violation if they decide not to respect someone's gender identity and expression in real estate. Whether they like it or not, or think that's political or not, it's the law here in Connecticut. It has been for a really long time. And we're very concerned that if we do not continue to reinforce the fair housing laws here, that our members are going to get caught up in it. They're not going to know what the law is. And having them wait, you know, 2 years to find out later, you know, is a long time. So, I mean, we just respectfully request this is an option for those who need to take a mandatory course, that our course be one that's provable. You know, we understood that, and not just us, I'm not asking for something, I mean, obviously it's a CTR course, but, you know, if we have the ability to do this under the law, we would just like to request that we be approved with this content.
Is there a Jeff, you had a question?
Hi, yes, this is Jeff Weiss. I'm with KEME Certified. Procedurally, you know, we know nothing about Cindy's courses she submitted. I'm sure it's great, but approving a second mandatory course, which with a different title in the middle of a renewal cycle, which is already very confusing to licensees, just simply around the expiration deadlines and the 90-day requirement, would create some level of confusion and frustration among both my team, all the other schools out there that service Connecticut licensees, boards, because the communication between updates and requirements from DCP down aren't always clear or available to students and licensees in Connecticut. So one of the challenges is going to be exactly what you've discussed. And we're going to be flooded with, well, I didn't take the other one. And there was 2 last year, there was 3, you know, and then 5 years ago, there was 2, there's Fair Housing Part 1 and Fair Housing Part 2. And it was clear then, like, hey, those were the 2 you have to take. But then when you add a supplement or an additional course, or there's nothing wrong with that, but I think procedurally, I don't know that the state is set up with the right regulations to accommodate how a variety of topics are handled. In other states, they do this. They say you have to have a course on fair housing. They don't care what it's called. They review it and they approve it. In other states, there's New York has cultural competency and bias. There are many different titles of that course that each provider creates and submits, and then the state reviews it, decides whether it's approved to count towards those credits. It sounds like this is similar to what Cindy's proposing here, but I don't know that the regulations are set up in such a way that it would control the way that those courses are both communicated and marketed to consumers, to licensees. So I think that there's a larger conversation around if we're going to transition, if the state of Connecticut is going to transition from the historical process to having multiple mandatory varieties, because we produce our own courses here, and like Cindy, like there are a number of questions and complaints, and we hear stories from agents that tell us, oh, my friend did this and that when it's really them, and how would you? So we have a not our own hotline, but we have our own flow of information from active licensees around hot topics, anywhere from cybersecurity to agency and form diligence, form hygiene when you're filling out all the forms. Like, there are a lot of trending topics that come up, and we work those into our courses. They are our elective courses because that's how we update our courses based on feedback. So, you know, I'm not making any judgment on this course. I just think that the state has to procedurally be set up to accommodate, if this course is approved as a mandatory, you know, what's to prevent every other provider in the state from creating their own version of a mandatory course, which may be equally as good. And how are you going to kind of funnel all those through the review process and then make them in a marketable way and control how they're marketed, right? Is a provider going to put forth a full course on cybersecurity, agency, form disclosure, any other hot topic, include a little bit of fair housing, and say this is the mandatory course, as opposed to this is a mandatory course, or this course satisfies the requirement to meet a mandatory topic? I think those are considerations that you guys have to discuss internally, or however it's done, to figure out how that's handled.
So
Just so,
I can
just so
answer
you know, that
some of those.
We're not adding new mandatory courses that are proprietary and unilateral. That is done.
And then as far as addressing the regulations right now are clear. There has to be a course, and you have to take at least one course consisting of 3 hours that covers fair housing legislation, licensing laws, and regulations. Beyond that, the commission could create further kind of outlines or curricula saying, listen, we think it's very important for this that every course that's submitted to fulfill the mandatory requirement includes something about agency law, for example. And that's something that the commission could consider for the next go round, even though they chose not to for this. As far as communication to the consumers, yes, and that will also be heavily on the department to communicate that, as you said, you have to fulfill the mandatory requirement by taking one of these courses, and those will be provided and listed. So that's the message: is you have to take one course of the courses that have been approved by the commission to fulfill the mandatory requirement. Unfortunately, there's nothing in the law, regs, or even policy by the commission creating a deadline for submission for a course that is to be considered mandatory. So I believe it would be inappropriate for the commission, just due to timing, to refuse to consider any applications for mandatory courses. Though again, if the commission wanted to create a deadline in regulation, considering that there is pending legislation that will require new regs, that's certainly something that the commission could review going forward to create some kind of stability in the process. If you want a course considered for the mandatory requirement, you know, the application with all materials must be received by whatever date that you wanted to put in the regulation, but that currently is not the law.
So my question, it seems that what we're really talking about here is approving this as an alternative for the current mandatory. And I don't see I think it will confuse CGR's customers, but I don't see a reason from our perspective why we shouldn't allow it.
We're hearing a lot of echo.
I'm
Well,
sorry, Ben.
I'm hearing an echo someplace.
It's I believe it's the individual with phone number 860-798-9544.
So which one is it?
Oh, I think it's been resolved.
Yeah, and I just want to note, we're talking about real estate licensees who are responsible for people's largest real estate transactions. I think that we can overcome something this minor as far as what we expect people to be able to know.
You know, there's one other thing too on these courses. I think maybe we should think about having a time of some sort. How much time, as you know, it's important that we have fair housing legislation, licensing laws and regulation. How much time should the course have? There's nothing about that. I mean, you could have 2 minutes on each topic and that would cover it. I think there should be a time frame of some sort.
Well, I believe in the materials, because I remember reviewing this, that CTR submitted, they did actually have a breakout of how much time was spent on each topic. It also is required that the total.
For future, if we're going to have other courses, because you're saying anybody can have a course as long as it has the ingredients. The question I want to know, how much ingredients other courses will have. And perhaps maybe if we make a regulate of some sort, saying, listen, you've got to have at least 20 minutes or 15 minutes of per hour. Okay, and that would solve a little bit of the problem. Because I don't know when they design these courses, if they know of a time frame.
Sure, yes. I mean, in the reg, it's required to be 3 classroom hours. Beyond that, if the commission wanted to create an outline ahead of time for schools that wanted to submit mandatory courses, they absolutely would be within your discretion to say, in order for us to approve a mandatory course, you must include at least 20 minutes of fair housing legislation and 1 hour of licensing laws. And that would be absolutely something that you could consider, even in more detail than that, if you so chose.
And you're saying you do that during regulation review?
No, so there's 2 different things. So creating kind of a basic guidelines of what you require would not require regulation. You could, as a policy, just vote to adopt guidelines going forward for what you would like in mandatory courses.
But I thought policies don't actually have to be followed, do they? Policies are,
I think, I mean,
suggestion, is that correct?
Well, no, they're not enforceable as a violation of law. But if you are the body that is approving a course and you're saying these are the things that we expect for courses to submit, that would be sufficient basis for you to reject a course if it didn't comply with the policies that you had published. That's different than the other. However, as far as the regulation review, that would be if you wanted to create a deadline by which all mandatory courses needed to be submitted. That would need to be in a regulation. That couldn't simply be a department or a commission policy.
And when does that happen on the calendar? Like, when is that? What month does that happen? Because we're in statute review right now, right?
So yeah, so the statutes the statutes that are currently submitted will be, the session wraps up at the end of June. We will be submitting regs. So reg review can happen anytime after that. There is no deadline to submit regulations. There's no timetable. Okay. However, given that there is current statutory language pending, it would make sense to wait and to see if that bill passes, because obviously there's going to be a lot of other regulations that would need to be updated along with anything here. And obviously those regs would be submitted in consultation with the commission.
Is regulations internal by DCP?
Regulations are rules that are submitted in consultation with the commission by the department that kind of provide further detail and kind of meat on the bone to the statutes. Correct.
Clarification. Yeah.
So that's when we would do all these things, Ben, as far as like, if we want to flesh out, not the time of the, 15 minutes to fair housing or whatever it is, but if another provider wants to provide a mandatory course, it needs to be in by, August of the year prior to the cycle beginning. So everything can be reviewed and approved properly and then go to train the trainer.
We may want to have a meeting just to discuss that.
That's fine. Yep.
I expect that not just this, but the regulations generally will take up a significant amount of meeting time going forward.
Okay.
Teresa, do you have another?
Oh, I'm done with what I want to say.
Okay. Jeff, you have?
Just on the topic of topics and courses, a brief reminder that an individual came before the board a long time ago and was able to complete a 3-hour course in 13 or 15 minutes. So we're discussing, or it is being discussed, the different topics that should be included in a course, which becomes almost a moot point if it's not enforced that the individuals actually sit through the course in a way that's measurable and that can be confirmed that the student actually took and/or participated or engaged with the course in some capacity. So currently, right now, in the state of Connecticut, there are courses that I believe can be completed in single to double-digit minutes and get 3 full credit hours. So as a note, for the record, I think that there should be a regulation proposed around seat time, and this is not reinventing the wheel. Many other states already have this type of regulation in place, so you don't have to come up with new language for that if it's something you want to include. That's all. Thank you.
Cindy, would the CTR class be taught in person?
The plan would be to teach it in person, but I guess it could be created electronically.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We put it, as Jeff said, we obviously strongly support what he believes. 3 hours should be 3 hours.
Any other questions then? So now it looks like we're really, we're at a point where we need to see the course, look at it. Any modification that's just going to be done should be done prior to us getting it.
That it's a law change that made a switch, Ben. The fact that, yeah, that is not, and I think that anytime a law changes during a cycle, a provider should immediately change their course to meet the law. So this is an addition of victims of domestic violence. It is not a substantive change to the course at all. What Amy saw posted online is the course.
Anything else?
So,
all right,
Mr. Chairman, is it my understanding that the commission doesn't feel they have sufficient information to act at this time?
That's correct.
Okay. Given that the course was submitted in February, perhaps the commission might be amenable to a special meeting so that the applicant wouldn't have to wait another 3 months before being able to know whether this course is going to be able to be offered. And we will ensure you have whatever documents that you need to review in whatever format that you need well prior to that meeting.
I don't know until we get the course how much time we're going to need. I mean, we could do it. We look at it.
I reviewed it this morning, and I would be comfortable voting on it now. So it took me 20 minutes to look through it and be comfortable with it.
Well, you have it. I don't think the rest of us had.
No, what I'm saying is it didn't take me, days to look through it and hem and haw over it. I just reviewed it, and it seemed fine and to cover the points that they were the topics they thought were important that were missing from the other, that it seemed fine. So, I don't know that we need a ton of time to have between now and a special meeting to vote on it. That's all. That's what I'm saying.
Our next meeting is what, July? Am I correct? I'm sorry, August 2nd. So I think if we get the course or whatever, and once we look at that, we can have a meeting. Review it.
Okay, I will work.
The problem is that from future on, I'm thinking this out a little bit. We don't want to keep having for every course, have a special meeting.
No, this is only because the application was received well in advance, and clearly there was some disconnect between the materials that you received and what you thought you needed to review. In the future, it would be if we received a course prior to a next meeting, we would get that information to you in the proper format in advance of the meeting. So no one would have to wait any more than 90 days before having you review, and we wouldn't require special meetings. This is due to the kind of growing pains of starting this process anew.
Okay. All right, so then you'll get the course to us first, and then we'll look at it, and we'll get back to, I don't know if if we have to have a meeting, do we have to have a meeting, public meeting, just to review this course?
Correct,
Not to
because it
vote
would
on
have to
not
be,
vote on it.
Just have to have a
No
public
voting,
meeting to
I'm just
vote
talking
on
about
it.
just to review it. Let's say we want to
can
get
review it.
just to review it.
So I'll put it this way. Each individual member can review the material at their leisure. You cannot communicate among the board members about the course unless you're doing so in a public meeting.
You answered that. Okay, so we can't meet about it. We can't discuss it. We're not gonna meet. We're not gonna have to meet. So I guess we'll look at it and review it and
Can we set a meeting time now? Because they have the course. I'm assuming they'll just send us an email at some point today or tomorrow with the course in it. So you have a file, and can we set a meeting time now for when we would review this?
And could you just send us one file so we don't have to go through 10 to try to find what we're looking for? Please just send a PDF file.
Yes, we will work together to have that. So you would like one file with all the documents
That's
in
correct.
PDF with no link, correct? Understood.
All right. Does anybody want to look at their calendar, what we have? Is there any way we can unmute Linda Burnham internally here? She's muted. She can't unmute. I thought we were able to do that.
Is she the one who is under the 203 number?
No.
Oh no, she's over here. Hang on.
No, we cannot unmute people. We don't have that capability.
Oh yeah, no.
We can only mute. We can't unmute. But she could dial in separately, leave the video on and could dial in separately if she's having problem with sound.
Yeah. Is there something she's, yeah.
Or just or log out of the meeting and try logging back in. Sometimes that solves the issue.
Okay, let's look at some. What about the 17th of May? 2 weeks? Roughly?
That's fine for me as long as it's in the morning.
Yeah, you're saying 10 o'clock on the 17th?
Yeah. Works for me.
Me as well.
Let's put it this way, who it doesn't work for? All right, does that work for you?
Yes, it does.
Ed?
Okay.
Okay. Linda, I'll pray that you can hear. Oh, good. Okay. Amy, good. Sharon, good, right? So morning or afternoon? What's better?
10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Fine,
Is
as
10
usual.
is 10 in the morning good? So that
Can
makes
we do
everybody-
earlier since no one has to drive anywhere? Can we do 9?
How about
Anybody close?
9:30?
Yeah, how about a compromise of 9:30?
Okay.
All right, 9:30 on the 17th. Okay. Anything else?
I have one question. Since you're setting up a special meeting, would you want to invite Mr. McCool to that special meeting, or still have him wait until the August meeting?
No,
Invite him.
I don't want to mix that. No. He's gonna have to wait till August.
I'm sorry, is that 9:45 or 9:30?
9:30.
Thank you.
Great. Any old business we want to talk about or anything that anybody wants to mention that's going on and that we could discuss? Everybody's happy right now? Yeah. That's good.
That's a very good question.
With that, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for
I do-
participating. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I did have a question, if anybody doesn't mind just waiting a moment. So just to be clear, the Education Committee and the Real Estate Commission set a mandatory course. So with what's going on now, does that mean every cycle where the commission sets the mandatory course, we're going to have people coming in because they don't like that course and presenting another course?
If we set a deadline by when they would have to have mandatory course content provided to the committee through regulations, then it sounds like no, like we would have a deadline, and if their stuff wasn't in by then they missed that cycle.
But it wouldn't stop them from providing, they can submit unlimited courses. They could submit 50 courses if they so.
But is
Not that would be
mandatory,
mandatory, I believe.
I'm talking about the mandatory course.
Yes, they could submit
So this
50
is the
different
second time.
versions 1 through, whatever they want.
It was my understanding every time I took it, it was that course, that one course, that was the mandatory course. There were no
And that was the concern, is that
alternates
this
or
will,
revisions of it. It was the course was presented and whoever taught it taught that course.
Ryan,
right?
you were saying before, if we could set a deadline via regulations that would allow that education committee to say, put a hard stop as to when people would have to have, companies would have to have content to us for a mandatory course consideration. Is that correct?
I'm just going to quibble with some language, but generally correct. Yes, you could, in regulation, set a deadline by which the commission would no longer accept applications, because it's the commission's ultimate authority.
For that 2-year cycle.
For an alternate to mandatory. That's all we're concerned about. All I'm concerned about is not any additional courses. It just for that would qualify for the mandatory course.
We could also, through regulation, refine the ingredients of that course. That would be mandatory.
Like bullet point what needs to be in there.
You could do that either through a vote of the commission alone, or you could do it through regulation at your.
You could do it as a vote. Okay.
Right. You could set guidelines that change every year by vote of the commission. That to kind of go into further detail on, let's say again, agency law is something that the commission felt was important. You could, prior to whatever deadline you set, say, in order to be approved for a mandatory course this year, you must have 20 minutes on agency law. You could set, but you'd have to set those guidelines well in advance of the deadline for submission of a course.
Okay.
If you establish such a deadline.
But we can't. We need a regulation for the time. In other words.
I'm sorry, sir.
We would need we'd have to go through our regulations for the time deadline.
Correct.
Why is that? I'm just curious. Why can't we just vote on the same time?
Because without some form of law, either statute or regulation, saying that there's a deadline to submit a course, if the commission declined to review courses after a certain date, the commission would be subject to some legal exposure by people that would like to offer courses, and the commission declining to review based upon a deadline that it internally set with no statutory authority.
Okay. That's any other question, Sharon?
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Can I adjourn again?
Sorry.
All right. Thank you all again for participating. We'll see you on the 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bobby.
Thank you.